The alarm screamed across the mining colony of Veshtara 9. Ryla's forearms trembled as she ran through the crowded corridors. Her crystalline carapace caught the red emergency lights, making her look like a running jewel in the chaos. Behind her, through the thick observation windows, she could see it coming. The ion tempest. A wall of purple and black energy that stretched from ground to sky, swallowing everything in its path. "Move! Move!" someone shouted in Galactic Standard. Workers of a dozen different species pushed and shoved toward the main shelter entrances. Ryla's people, the Kirvathi, were small compared to most galactic races. She got knocked aside twice, her thin legs struggling to keep balance. She reached Shelter Bay 3, where her work supervisor stood at the entrance. He was a broken, thick-skinned and irritable on the best of days. Today his small eyes were full of panic. "Please," Ryla clicked through her translator. "Let me in. The storm is close." The broken looked past her at the approaching Tempest, then at the packed shelter behind him. "Full, no more room, but I work here. I fixed the oxygen recyclers last week." No, more room." He slammed his hand on the door control. The heavy blast door began to slide shut. Ryla jumped back just in time. The door sealed with a hiss that sounded like mockery. She stood there for 3 precious seconds, frozen. Around her, other late arrivals scattered, searching for any shelter they could find. The Tempest's electromagnetic wall was maybe 2 minutes away now. She could feel static electricity making her sensory hairs stand up. Then she saw it. An old corridor she had passed 100 times but never entered. At the end, a door with faded markings. She ran toward it, her 4 legs carrying her faster than most species could manage in short bursts. As she got closer, she could read the ancient symbols painted on the door. Terran, human writing, her entire body locked up. Every instinct in her prey species brain screamed at her to run away. Humans, deathworlders, predators. The species that every alien child heard about in whispered stories. They came from a planet that tried to kill them every day, so they became unkillable themselves. But the Tempest was 45 seconds away now. She could hear the roar of it, like reality itself being torn apart. Ryla grabbed the door handle with 2 of her hands. It was stiff, unused for years maybe. She pulled hard. Nothing. She used all 4 arms, her feet bracing against the wall. The door groaned and suddenly gave way. She tumbled inside. The room was small, maybe 4 meters by 4 meters. Dim emergency lighting cast everything in a yellow glow. Supply crates lined one wall. Environmental controls blinked on another. And sitting on a crate in the middle of the room, calmly reading a paper book, was a human. A male human, tall with dark hair and dark eyes. He wore simple work clothes, gray and practical. He looked up from his book when she entered. His eyes met hers. Ryla stopped breathing. She knew what she was looking at. Forward-facing eyes, binocular vision, a predator's gaze that could track prey across vast distances. His hands, resting on the book, showed opposable thumbs capable of using tools and weapons. His frame, while not bulky, held the coiled strength that came from a high-gravity world. He was probably in his 30s, young for a human. His face was calm, showing no expression. That was worse somehow. Predators went still before they struck. "Come in," he said. His voice was gentle, speaking perfect Galactic Standard. "Close the door. The storm's about to hit." Ryla's legs wouldn't move. She stood in the doorway, caught between the Tempest behind her and the predator ahead. Her bioluminescent patches began to glow softly with fear, a stress response her species couldn't control. The human slowly closed his book and set it aside. He made no move to stand up. "The door," he said again, pointing past her. "Please." The roar of the Tempest was right behind her now. The corridor lights were flickering. Ryla's survival instinct finally overpowered her fear of the human. She grabbed the door and pulled it shut. The heavy metal sealed just as the first wave of the Tempest hit the building. The bunker shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights went fully dark for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then emergency backup power kicked in, bringing back the yellow glow. Ryla pressed herself against the wall furthest from the human. Her carapace plates rattled against each other, making a soft clicking sound. Her people couldn't help it when they were terrified. They rattled like leaves in wind. The human hadn't moved from his seat on the crate. He picked up his book again and opened it to his marked page. For a long moment, the only sounds were the storm outside, Ryla's clicking carapace and the soft turn of a paper page. "My name is Kang Do-yun. the human said without looking up from his book. I'm a contract engineer. I was inspecting this old shelter when the evacuation alarm started. Ryla said nothing. Her translator device hung from a strap around her thorax, but she couldn't make her voice work. Do-hyun continued as if having a normal conversation. This bunker was built about 200 years ago, during the first human expansion into this sector. The supplies are old, but still good. There's water, food rations, medical supplies, and enough air for 3 people for 5 days. He turned another page. We'll be fine. Still, Ryla remained silent, pressed against her wall. You're Kirvathi, Do-hyun said. It wasn't a question. I recognized the carapace pattern. Your people have excellent engineers. I worked with several Kirvathi techs during my service. At the word service, Ryla's fear spiked higher. Service meant military. This human was a soldier, a trained killer. Do-hyun seemed to sense her increased fear. He finally looked up from his book directly at her. I won't hurt you, he said simply. You're safe here. Those forward-facing predator eyes held hers for a moment. Then he returned to his book, making himself small on his crate, giving her all the space in the room. Outside, the ion tempest raged against Veshtara 9. Inside, a prey species and a predator waited in silence for the storm to pass. Ryla's plates continued their frightened clicking. Do-hyun continued reading his old paper book, and the long hours of the tempest stretched ahead of them both. 3 hours passed. The bunker shook with regular vibrations as the ion tempest battered the colony above them. Sometimes the lights flickered. Once, something large hit the building hard enough to make dust rain from the ceiling panels. Through it all, Do-hyun read his book and Ryla stayed pressed against her wall. Her carapace had finally stopped its frightened clicking. Now she just stood very still, watching the human with all her visual sensors. He had not moved from his crate except once, when he reached into a supply box and pulled out a water container. He took a drink, then held it out toward her. Water? He offered. Ryla shrank back. Do-hyun set the container on the floor midway between them and returned to his seat. It's there if you need it, he said. Another hour crawled by. Ryla's throat was very dry now. Her species needed water more frequently than most. On her homeworld before the crisis, there had been morning mists and evening dews. Here on Veshtara 9, the air was recycled and dry. She stared at the water container sitting on the floor. Do-hyun turned a page in his book. He seemed completely absorbed in whatever he was reading. His body language was relaxed, almost bored. Ryla had studied human behaviors in her safety training. This was not how predators acted before attacking. They tensed. They focused. They prepared. This human looked like he was simply waiting for the storm to pass. Very slowly, Ryla moved one leg forward. Then another. Her people could move silently when they wanted to, and she tried to be as quiet as possible now. She crept toward the water container, ready to bolt back at any sign of threat. Do-hyun kept reading. He didn't even glance up. Ryla reached the container, grabbed it with 2 hands, and scurried back to her wall. She opened it and drank deeply. The water was cold and clean. It was the best thing she had tasted in hours. There's food too if you're hungry, Do-hyun said, still not looking up. The ration bars are in the green box. Not delicious, but they work. Ryla clutched the water container. Why are you here? Her voice came out scratchy through the translator. It was the first time she had spoken since entering the bunker. Do-hyun looked up from his book then. I told you. I'm an engineer. I inspect old installations before they're decommissioned. This shelter was on my list. No, why are you here? In this shelter? Why didn't you go to the main evacuation centers? Something changed in Do-hyun's face. Not anger. Something sadder. They asked me to leave, he said quietly. When the alarm started, I went to Shelter Bay 1. The supervisor took one look at me and said having a human there would cause panic. Make people uncomfortable. It would be better for everyone if I found somewhere else to wait out the storm. Ryla's sensory hairs twitched. She understood that feeling. Being turned away. Being unwanted because of what you were, not who you were. Her people knew it well. Your species was nearly enslaved, Do-hyun said. Twice, according to the history records. The first time by the Reckoned Dominion about 60 years ago. The second time during the extinction crisis, when the slavers tried to take advantage of the chaos. You know our history? Ryla asked, surprised. I was there, Do-hyun said simply. During the extinction crisis. I was part of the relief fleet. Ryla's legs nearly gave out. The relief fleet. When her people's son began to die, when the galactic community debated for weeks about whether it was worth saving a prey species, humans had simply shown up. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of volunteers. They evacuated 3 billion Kirvathi to new worlds, fighting off slavers and pirates the entire time. You were there? She whispered. I was 16, Do-hyun said. Too young, probably. But my older brother had joined, and I lied about my age to follow him. I served on the transport ship Indomitable. We made 7 runs to Kirvathi Prime before the sun collapsed. He set down his book and looked at her directly. I remember your people, you sang. Even when the bombardment fell, even when the slaver ships attacked, your people sang in the evacuation centers. These harmony songs that felt like they vibrated in your chest. I'd never heard anything like it. Ryla felt her bioluminescent patches flicker. She remembered the songs. All Kirvathi did. It was what they did in the darkness, in the fear. They sang to remind themselves they were still alive, still together. The singing, she said. We call it the singing. When words are not enough, we sing. It was beautiful, Do-hyun said. Terrifying and beautiful. We were human kids, most of us teenagers, and we were so scared. We tried not to show it because we were supposed to be the brave ones, the rescue force. But at night in our bunks, we could hear your people singing through the hull. It helped. It reminded us why we were there. The bunker shook with another impact from the storm. The lights dimmed for a moment, then steadied. Ryla found herself moving closer to the human, no longer pressed against the wall. She settled onto the floor about 2 meters from his crate. Why did humans come? She asked. Everyone else debated, argued about costs and resources and whether our species had strategic value. But humans just came. Why? Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Do you know about Earth history? About Korea? Ryla shook her head. Korea is where my family comes from. It's a peninsula on Earth between larger, more powerful nations. Throughout history, Korea was invaded many times, occupied, divided. In the 20th century, there was a terrible war that split the country in half. Millions died. Families were separated for generations. He picked up his book, showing her the cover. It was written in human script she couldn't read. This is a book of Korean history my grandmother gave me. She wanted me to remember where we came from. Korea survived because of something called pali pali. It means hurry, hurry. When everything is falling apart, you don't debate. You don't wait for perfect plans. You just move fast and help who you can. But we weren't your people, Ryla said. We weren't even from your planet. We were just another alien species. Do-hyun smiled slightly. That's exactly why we came. Because no one else would. Because we remembered what it felt like to be the ones everyone else abandoned. Because we decided, after all our own wars and suffering, that if we had strength, we'd use it to make sure no one else got left behind. He rolled up his sleeve, showing his forearm. A massive scar ran from his wrist almost to his elbow. The tissue was rough, badly healed. Shrapnel, he said, from the last evacuation run. The slaver ships had breached the perimeter. Your people's defense force was falling back to the transport ships, trying to buy time for the last civilians to board. They were dying. I was on weapons control, just a kid with too much responsibility. I thought I couldn't let them die alone protecting us, so I left my post, ran down to the cargo bay, grabbed a rifle I barely knew how to use, and I stood with them. Ryla stared at the scar. You could have died. A lot of people did die that day, Do-hyun said quietly. Humans, Kirvathi, others, but we got the civilians out. All of them. That's what mattered. He pulled his sleeve back down and picked up his book again. Anyway, that's why I became an engineer instead of staying military. Decided I'd rather build things than fight. But sometimes I think we're still fighting, just in different ways. Fighting against the idea that some species deserve help and others don't. Fighting against people who think strength means you should dominate instead of protect. The storm raged outside, but inside the bunker, Ryla felt something shifting. The human in front of her was not the monster from childhood stories. He was someone who had been scared too, who had scars, who had chosen to stand with her people when they needed it most. Thank you, she said softly, for what you did, for my people. Do-hyun looked up and smiled. Not a predator's baring of teeth, but something warm. You're welcome. And for what it's worth, thank you for giving me a chance. I know I'm scary. Most people can't help but see a weapon when they look at humans. I'm trying to see past it, Ryla admitted. That's all anyone can ask, Do-yun said. Then he went back to his book, and the two of them settled into a more comfortable silence as the Tempest continued its assault on the world above. The bunker's main power failed during the 8th hour of the storm. The yellow emergency lights died, replaced by a dim red glow from backup systems that were older than most of the colony buildings. Everything became shadows and uncertain shapes. Ryla's bioluminescence activated immediately. She couldn't control it when she was stressed or frightened. Soft blue and green light began to pulse from the patches along her carapace. It was a defense mechanism from her homeworld, meant to confuse predators. But here in the darkness, it just made her feel exposed. "That's actually really beautiful," Do-yun said from his crate. His voice was calm in the dark. "I've seen Kirvathi bioluminescence before, but never this close. It's like watching stars." Ryla's patches flickered brighter with embarrassment. "I can't stop it. When we're scared, we light up. It's stupid. It makes us easy to find." "Not stupid. Different environment, different evolution. On your original homeworld, there were probably bioluminescent plants and animals everywhere, right? So lighting up helped you blend in, find your people, communicate in the dark." "Yes," Ryla admitted. "The histories say our ancestors lived in forests that glowed at night. But that world is gone now. This trait just marks us as targets. Or it lights the way forward," Do-yun said. He stood up slowly, telegraphing his movements. "Can I tell you a story? It might help pass the time." Ryla settled more comfortably on the floor. "Yes, please." Do-yun walked to the far wall and leaned against it, keeping distance between them. "This is a story my grandmother told me, about why Korea survived when so many powers wanted to erase it. It's not in history books. It's just family wisdom passed down." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "A long time ago, there was a terrible war. Korea was caught in the middle of it. The fighting destroyed cities and killed millions. When the war finally ended, the country was split in two. Families couldn't visit each other. Brothers and sisters were on opposite sides of a border they couldn't cross. That sounds like the Kirvathi separation," Ryla said quietly. "When the first wave of evacuations went to different worlds, some families were split up. They've never reunited." "Exactly like that," Do-yun nodded. "The pain was the same. But here's what my grandmother told me. She said that in those dark years, when everyone thought Korea would just disappear, absorbed by bigger nations, the people made a choice. They decided that surviving wasn't enough. They wanted to thrive, to prove that small didn't mean weak, that being prey didn't mean being helpless." He started pacing slowly, his hands moving as he talked. Ryla noticed he was careful to pace in a small area, not getting closer to her. "They worked," Do-yun continued. "Harder than should have been possible. Built cities from ruins, created technology from nothing. They called it the miracle on the Han River. In one generation, Korea went from destroyed to prosperous. Not because they were stronger than everyone else, but because they refused to quit. But humans are strong," Ryla said. "You come from a death world. You have predator traits. We're strong now," Do-yun interrupted gently. "But we weren't always. Earth nearly killed us a dozen different ways before we figured out how to survive it. Climate change, nuclear weapons, pandemics, wars, every century brought a new disaster. We're not special because we're tough. We're tough because we had to be." He sat back down on his crate. "That's what I saw in your people during the evacuation. You were dying. Your sun was failing. Slavers were circling. The galaxy was abandoning you. But you kept going. Kept singing. Kept helping each other. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen." Ryla felt her bioluminescence pulse stronger, not from fear this time. Something else. Pride, maybe. "You really think we're strong?" "I know you are," Do-yun said firmly. "You want to know what scared me during those evacuations? It wasn't the slaver ships. It wasn't the dying sun. It was the idea that we might not get everyone out in time, that your people, who had survived so much already, might be wiped out because we weren't fast enough." He was quiet for a moment. Then he started humming. It was a simple melody, rising and falling like wind through leaves. The sound filled the small bunker, mixing with the distant roar of the storm outside. "What is that?" Ryla asked. "An old Korean song. My grandmother sang it to me when I was scared. I don't remember all the words anymore, but the melody stayed with me." The humming continued, and something strange happened. Ryla found herself humming along, adding a harmony in the Kirvathi way. Her people couldn't help but harmonize. It was instinct. One voice alone was incomplete. Together, voices became whole. The two melodies wove together in the darkness, human and alien, creating something neither could make alone. When the song ended, they sat in comfortable silence. "How did you end up here?" Ryla asked. "On Veshtara 9? It's not a nice place, just mines and processing plants." Dohyun sighed. "After the war, after the relief fleet was disbanded, I couldn't stay in the core worlds. Every station, every colony, people knew what humans had done. The battles we'd fought, the enemies we'd killed. They treated me like a weapon, something to be locked away when not needed." "But you saved species," Ryla protested. "You helped us, I know. But fear doesn't work like logic. People see a human, especially a veteran, and they think violence. They think danger. Even when I was just trying to order food or fix a computer console, I could see it in their eyes. That fear, that step backward." Ryla's sensory hairs drooped. "I did that to you. When I first came in, I was terrified." "You had reason to be," Dohyun said without accusation. "You didn't know me. Your instincts said predator. That's not your fault. Is that why you're always so calm? So careful with your movements?" "Yes, I learned early that if I wanted to work with other species, I had to make myself seem as non-threatening as possible. Move slowly. Keep my voice gentle. Give people space. Let them come to me instead of approaching them." "That must be exhausting," Ryla said. "Sometimes," Dohyun admitted, "but it's worth it. Every person who gives me a chance, who sees past the predator exterior, makes it worth it. Like you. You're still scared, I can see it. But you're trying. That means everything." The bunker shook with another impact from the storm. Ryla's patches flickered with renewed anxiety. "Tell me about your hive," Dohyun said quickly, trying to distract her. "Is your family still together after the evacuation?" "Most of them," Ryla said, grateful for the subject change. "My hive mothers are on Kirvathi Secondary now. They run a fabrication plant. My clutch siblings are scattered across 3 worlds. We video call when we can, but it's not the same as being together." "I understand that. My brother is on Earth. My grandmother passed away 5 years ago. I'm out here alone. We're both far from home," Ryla observed. "Maybe that's why we met," Dohyun said. "Two lonely people from lonely species waiting out a storm together." Ryla looked at the human sitting in the darkness, lit only by the red emergency lights and her own bioluminescence. He had scars from defending her people. He had been turned away from shelters for being what he was. He had lost family and home. And yet he sat here calm and kind, sharing stories to ease her fear. "I was wrong about you," Ryla said quietly. "You didn't know me yet," Dohyun replied. "There's a difference between being wrong and not having enough information. Still, I looked at you and saw a monster. I'm sorry. Apology accepted. And Ryla, thank you for staying. You could have run out into the storm rather than shelter with a human. That took courage." "Or stupidity," Ryla said, trying to make it a joke. "Sometimes those are the same thing." Dohyun smiled. "The best kind of stupidity. The kind that saves your life." The storm continued outside, but inside, in the darkness lit by alien bioluminescence and fading red lights, 2 beings from different worlds found something unexpected. Not just survival, understanding. The beginning of friendship forged in the most unlikely place between the least likely people. And though neither of them knew it yet, this meeting would ripple far beyond one small bunker on a remote mining colony. The temperature dropped during hour 12. Ryla noticed it first. Her species was cold-blooded, dependent on external heat to regulate body functions. When the environmental systems failed completely, the bunker began losing its stored warmth to the frozen ground beneath them. "It's getting cold," she said, her voice shaking slightly. Her forelegs drew closer together, trying to conserve heat. Dohyun stood immediately. "The heating system is offline. We need to do something about that." He moved to the supply crates and began searching through them with purpose. "There should be emergency warming supplies in here. These old military bunkers always had them." He pulled out several flat packages wrapped in green plastic. "Thermal packs. Chemical reaction warmers. They're old, but should still work." He cracked one of the packs and it began to heat up in his hands. "Here, hold this." He set the warming pack on the floor midway between them. Ryla crept forward and placed 2 of her hands around it. The heat was immediate and wonderful. "I'm going to build you a warm zone," Dohyun said. He pulled out more supplies. reflective blankets, additional thermal packs, and a small battery-powered heating element. He worked quickly but carefully, arranging everything in a corner of the bunker. "What are you doing?" Ryla asked, watching him move. "Creating a heat trap. The reflective blankets will bounce warmth back. The thermal packs will generate heat. The battery heater will supplement it. You'll be able to stay warm there while the storm passes." He activated more chemical warmers and placed them around the space he'd created. Then he draped the reflective blankets over supply crates to make walls. Within minutes, he had built a small shelter within the shelter. "There, that should work. Get inside." Ryla moved into the space. It was immediately warmer, almost cozy. But she noticed something. "What about you? Won't you be cold?" Do-hyun pulled off his work jacket and handed it to her. "Put this around your thorax. It'll help hold the heat in." "But then you'll have no jacket," Ryla protested. "I'll be fine. Humans regulate our own body temperature. We're endothermic. We make our own heat, but it's still cold." "You'll suffer." Do-hyun smiled slightly. "My ancestors survived in Siberia. They lived through Korean winters in the mountains with almost nothing. This bunker is warm compared to that. I'll be uncomfortable, but I'll live. You might not. So take the jacket." Ryla took the jacket in two of her hands. It was still warm from his body. She wrapped it around herself as best she could, given her different anatomy. "Thank you." Do-hyun returned to his crate, now wearing just a thin shirt. He rubbed his arms briefly, then picked up his book again as if nothing had changed. 2 more hours passed. Ryla watched the human from her warm corner. He was shivering now. Small tremors ran through his body. His breath created small clouds in the cold air. But he never complained. "Never asked for his jacket back, Do-hyun," Ryla said. "You're really cold. I'm managing. You don't have to pretend." "I can see you shaking." He set down his book. "I'm uncomfortable, yes. But you need the warmth more than I do. It's not false bravery. It's just practical." "Tell me something," Ryla said, wanting to distract him. "Teach me something human." "A word or phrase in your language," Do-hyun thought for a moment. "In Korean, we have a phrase, 안녕하세요. It means hello, but it literally translates to something like, are you at peace? It's how we greet each other." "안녕하세요," Ryla tried. Her translator struggled with the sounds. Her vocal structure wasn't made for human languages. The result was a clicking, chirping approximation that sounded nothing like the original. Do-hyun laughed. Not mockingly, but with genuine warmth. "That was terrible." "I know," Ryla said, and found herself making a sound like laughter too. Kirvathi laughter was more like musical chiming, but the emotion was the same. "Your language is impossible. Try another one. Gamsahamnida. It means thank you. Gamsahamnida." This attempt was even worse, all clicks and whistles. Do-hyun was grinning now despite the cold. "You're making new sounds. Korean Kirvathi hybrid words. We're creating a new language." They spent the next hour teaching each other simple phrases. Ryla taught him how to say light and harmony in her clicking language. Do-hyun taught her friendship and safety in Korean. Neither of them could pronounce the other's words properly, but that somehow made it more fun. Then Ryla noticed that Do-hyun had stopped shivering. He had gone very still. That was worse. It meant his body was giving up on trying to stay warm. "Come here," Ryla said suddenly. "What?" "Come here. Into the warm space. There's room for both of us." "Ryla, I need you to not freeze to death in front of me," Ryla said firmly. "You built this space big enough for 2. I think you did that on purpose. So stop being stubborn and get in here." Do-hyun hesitated, then slowly moved toward the warm corner. He sat down on the opposite side from Ryla, careful to maintain distance even in the small space. The heat from the thermal packs immediately started to work on him. His shivering resumed as his body recognized warmth and started responding again. "Thank you," he said quietly. They sat in silence for a while. Then the bunker shook with a particularly violent impact. Something above them groaned. Metal stressed beyond its limits. Ryla jerked in surprise, her bioluminescence flaring bright with fear. Without thinking, Do-hyun reached out to steady her. His hand touched her upper arm. Ryla flinched violently, scrambling backward so hard she hit the reflective blanket wall. Her carapace rattled in terror. Every instinct in her body screamed that she had been grabbed by a predator. Do-hyun pulled his hand back instantly, holding both hands up where she could see them. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have touched you without asking. That was wrong of me." Ryla's breathing was rapid. her bioluminescence pulsing in panicked patterns. The logical part of her brain knew he had just been trying to help. But the prey animal part was screaming danger. "I'm not going to touch you again," Do-hyun said, his voice very calm and steady. "You're safe, Ryla, I promise you're safe. I made a mistake. I moved without thinking. But you're in control here. I won't do anything without your permission first." He slowly moved back to his side of the warm space, giving her as much room as possible. He kept his hands visible on his knees, showing he wasn't reaching for anything. Gradually, Ryla's breathing slowed. Her bioluminescence faded to normal levels. The panic subsided, leaving embarrassment in its wake. "I'm sorry. I overreacted." "No," Do-hyun said firmly. "You reacted exactly as your instincts told you to. That's not overreacting. That's your body trying to keep you safe. I was wrong to touch you without warning. You were just trying to help. Intent doesn't matter if the result is making you feel unsafe. I know better. I've worked with prey species before. I should have asked first. I'm truly sorry." Ryla looked at the human across from her. He had kept his promise. The moment she showed fear, he backed off. He didn't get angry or offended. He took responsibility for his mistake. And he was giving her all the power in the situation. "I'm trying," she said softly, "to not be afraid. But it's hard. Every instinct I have says you're dangerous." "I am dangerous," Do-hyun said honestly. "I could hurt you badly if I wanted to, but I don't want to. And more than that, I will never want to. You're not prey to me, Ryla. You're a person, a colleague, maybe even a friend. Even after I just panicked, especially after you panicked, because you trusted me enough to be vulnerable. That's huge. And I violated that trust by moving too fast. I won't do that again." The storm continued to rage outside. Inside their small warm space, Human and Kirvathi sat together, learning the boundaries of a friendship neither had expected to find. Do-hyun kept his hands visible and his movements slow. Ryla stayed alert but no longer terrified. "Tell me more about your grandmother," Ryla said, eventually wanting to ease the tension. "She was fierce," Do-hyun smiled. "Tiny woman, but she had survived the Korean War as a child. Nothing scared her after that. She became a doctor, worked in refugee camps all over Earth. She always said that healing was the highest calling. That strength means nothing if you don't use it to protect those who can't protect themselves." "She sounds wonderful." She was. "I wish you could have met her. She would have liked you." "Why?" "Because you're brave. You're sitting in a bunker with a human, fighting your instincts, trying to see past your fear. That's the kind of courage she always respected. Not the courage to fight, the courage to trust." Ryla's bioluminescence pulsed softly, not from fear this time, from something warmer. "Thank you, Do-hyun, for everything. For the warmth. For the space. For understanding." "Thank you for giving me a chance," Do-hyun replied. "Most people don't." They settled into comfortable silence again, sharing warmth and space as the long night stretched on. Morning came, or what passed for morning in the bunker with no windows. Ryla's internal clock told her approximately 18 hours had passed since the storm began. She had slept fitfully, curled in the warm corner while Do-hyun kept watch from his side of the space. When she woke, she found a fresh thermal pack placed nearby. He must have replaced the cooling ones while she slept. "Good morning," Do-hyun said. He was eating a ration bar and looking at a small data pad. "I've been monitoring the external sensors. The storm appears to be passing." Ryla sat up, stretching her forelegs. "Really? We can leave?" "Soon. The ion levels are dropping. We should wait another hour to be safe, but yes. I think the worst is over." Hope fluttered in Ryla's chest. She could return to her quarters, contact her family, confirm everyone survived. She could leave this small bunker and the constant awareness of the predator sharing her space. Except now, thinking of Do-hyun as just a predator felt wrong. "What will you do?" she asked. "After we leave?" "Finish my inspection contract, I suppose. Move on to the next colony that needs old installations checked." "Same as always? Alone?" Do-hyun shrugged. "Usually, yes. That sounds lonely. It is sometimes. But it's also simple. No complicated relationships. No one getting uncomfortable around me. Just me and my work." Ryla thought about that. A life of isolation by choice because the alternative was being feared everywhere you went. It seemed sad. Before she could say so, Do-hyun stood up. "I'm going to check the door mechanism. Make sure we can actually get out when the time comes." He moved to the bunker entrance and began examining the control panel. Ryla watched him work, noting how his fingers moved with practiced efficiency. He was good at his job. That much was clear. "Looks good," he said after a few minutes. "The door should open fine. Let me just run a diagnostic to confirm the seals will hold during the opening sequence." He pressed several buttons on the panel. The diagnostic beeped, then beeped again. Then began a rapid, urgent beeping that made Ryla's sensory hairs stand straight up. "What is that?" she asked. Do-hyun's face had gone very still as he read the display. "That's a warning alarm. There's a second storm coming." "What? That's impossible. Ion Tempest don't come in pairs." "This one does." He pulled up a sensor image on the display. A massive wall of energy was forming, even larger than the first storm. It's a feedback loop. The first storm destabilized the upper atmosphere. Now there's a secondary formation, and it's going to hit in approximately 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Ryla's voice went high with panic. "We need to seal the door again now." Do-hyun's hands moved across the control panel, but then he stopped. His face showed something Ryla hadn't seen before. Fear. "What's wrong?" "The door mechanism is jammed. The diagnostic I just ran reset the system. Now it's stuck in a partial open position. I can't close it remotely." "What does that mean?" "It means I have to manually force it shut. And we have 80 seconds before the storm hits." Do-hyun ran to the door. It was indeed partially open, a gap of about 30 centimeters showing the corridor outside. He grabbed the emergency release handle and pulled. His muscles strained. The door didn't move. "It's stuck on the track," he said through gritted teeth. The storm damage from earlier must have warped the frame. Ryla rushed to his side. "Let me help." "Ryla, you can get through that gap. Your body is smaller. You could run for the main complex. You'd make it before the storm hits. And leave you here? Better one of us survives than neither," Do-hyun said, still pulling on the door. 70 seconds. "Go, please." Ryla looked at the gap. She could fit through it easily. She could run fast. The main complex was visible at the end of the corridor. She would probably make it. Probably. Every survival instinct in her prey species' body screamed at her to run, to save herself, to escape. She grabbed the door with all four of her hands. "What are you doing?" Do-hyun shouted. "What does it look like?" "I'm helping you close this door." "Ryla, no. You need to—" "Shut up and pull," Ryla said, her translator crackling with determination. 60 seconds. They both pulled. Ryla's species wasn't particularly strong individually, but they had excellent grip strength and forearms to use. She braced her legs against the wall and pulled with everything she had. The door groaned, moved slightly, but not enough. 50 seconds. "It's not working," Do-hyun said. "The mechanism is too damaged." "Then we force it," Ryla said. "On 3. Use all your strength. Ready?" Do-hyun looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something like wonder. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you stayed with me through the first storm. Because you kept me warm. Because leaving you here would be wrong. Now pull." 40 seconds. They pulled together. Human strength and Kirvathi grip combined in desperate effort. The door moved another few centimeters. Still not enough to seal. 30 seconds. "Different approach," Do-hyun said. "We need leverage. Help me wedge this supply crate against the door. We'll use it like a crowbar." They grabbed the nearest crate and jammed it into the gap. Together, they pushed down on the crate, using it to force the door along its damaged track. 20 seconds. The door groaned. Metal scraped against warped metal. It was moving, slowly but steadily. 15 seconds, almost there. Do-hyun grunted. "Keep pushing." Ryla's forearms burned with effort. She could hear the storm coming now, a roar that was building outside the colony structure. 10 seconds. The door was 3/4 closed. Not enough. The gap was still too large. "It's not going to make it," Ryla said, fear creeping into her voice. "Yes, it will," Do-hyun said firmly. "One more push. Everything you have, now." 5 seconds. They pushed together with final, desperate strength. Ryla felt something tear in her shoulder joint. Pain shot through her upper body. But the door moved. 3 seconds. The door slammed into the sealed position with a metallic clang. Do-hyun hit the lock control. The bolts engaged with solid chunks. 1 second. The second storm hit like a hammer of angry gods. The bunker shook so violently that both of them were thrown to the floor. The lights went completely dark this time. Ryla's bioluminescence was the only illumination, pulsing wildly with pain and adrenaline. "Did we seal it?" she gasped. Do-hyun pulled himself to the control panel, checking by feel in the darkness. Yes, the seal is holding. We made it. Then he turned toward her, voice in the darkness. Are you okay? My shoulder, Ryla said. I think I tore something. She heard him moving carefully toward her. Can I help? Can I examine it? Even through the pain, Ryla appreciated that he asked first. Yes, please. His hands found her in the darkness, guided by her bioluminescence. He gently probed her shoulder joint. His touch was clinical, professional, but also careful. It's dislocated, I think. Maybe torn ligaments. We need to stabilize it. He moved back to the supply crates, searching by feel. He returned with the medical kit. This is going to hurt. I need to immobilize the joint. Do it, Ryla said through clenched mandibles. Working in the darkness lit only by her own glow, Do-hyun carefully wrapped her shoulder in stabilizing bandages. He was gentle but thorough. The pain was intense, but his steady hands and calm voice helped. You're very brave, he said as he worked. The bravest person I've met in a long time. I'm terrified, Ryla admitted. That's what makes it brave. Courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing the right thing anyway. When he finished, he sat beside her, close but not touching. Why did you stay? You could have made it out. Because you didn't leave me, Ryla said simply. When I was cold, you gave me your jacket. When I was scared, you gave me space. When the storm came, you could have sealed yourself in and left me outside. But you didn't. You made room for me. That's just being decent. No, Ryla said firmly. That's being human. Real human. Not the scary stories. The real version. The one who chooses to help instead of harm. I wasn't going to abandon that. I wasn't going to abandon you. In the darkness, lit by alien bioluminescence, Do-hyun's voice was thick with emotion. Thank you. I felt like a monster for so long. Like the only value I have is in violence and strength. But you just treated me like a person. You are a person, Ryla said. A good one. The second storm raged outside, larger and more violent than the first. But inside the bunker, Human and Kirvathi sat together in the darkness. They had saved each other, protected each other, and in doing so they had proven something important. Strength wasn't just about physical power. It was about choosing to use that power for others. And courage wasn't just about facing danger. It was about facing your deepest fears and deciding that connection was worth the risk. They settled in to wait out the second storm together. And this time neither was alone. The second storm lasted 30 hours. 30 hours of darkness, cold and constant shaking as the ion tempest tried to tear the colony apart. Ryla's shoulder throbbed with pain despite the medication from the bunker's supplies. Do-hyun stayed close, monitoring her condition, changing her bandages when needed, keeping her warm. They talked through most of it. Stories from their childhoods, memories of family, dreams they'd given up on. Do-hyun told her about his brother, who became a teacher on Earth and sent him messages every month that he rarely had time to answer. Ryla told him about her clutch sibling who sang in the new Kirvathi symphony, keeping their people's musical traditions alive on a foreign world. Do you ever wish you could go back? Do-hyun asked during hour 20. To how things were before the crisis? Every day, Ryla admitted. But the old world is gone. The sun died. We can't ever go back. We can only go forward. That's very wise. That's very obvious, Ryla corrected. But obvious doesn't make it easier. By hour 28, they had exhausted most topics of conversation and simply sat together in companionable silence. Ryla dozed against the wall, her injured shoulder supported by carefully arranged supply packs. Do-hyun kept watch, occasionally checking the environmental sensors. Finally, in hour 30, the shaking stopped. The roar outside faded to silence. Do-hyun checked the external sensors multiple times, not trusting the first readings. It's over, he said, disbelief in his voice. Both storms have passed. The ion levels are back to normal. We can leave. Ryla stirred, blinking her multiple eyes. Really? Really? Let me check the door mechanism. This time, the door opened smoothly. The corridor beyond was damaged but intact. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. In the distance, they could hear voices. The rescue teams were searching the facility. Hello? Do-hyun called out. Anyone there? We need medical assistance. Within minutes, a rescue team appeared. They were led by a female human in a Relief Corps uniform. She was older than Do-hyun, maybe in her 50s, with gray streaks in her dark hair. The name on her uniform read, Captain Lee Bora, Do-hyun, she said, surprise in her voice. Is that you? Captain Lee, Do-hyun responded with obvious respect. Didn't expect to see you here. I'm coordinating relief efforts for the entire sector. When we got word about the double Tempest, I came personally. She looked past him to Ryla, noting her injured state. Your companion needs medical attention. She's Kirvathi. Her shoulder joint is damaged. She needs a specialist in non-human physiology. We have one with the team. Let me call them up. Captain Lee spoke into her communication device. More rescue workers appeared. 2 were Kirvathi, their carapaces marked with medical symbols. They rushed to Ryla's side, examining her injury with clicking concern. What happened? One of them asked in the Kirvathi language. We had to force a door closed, Ryla explained. The second storm was coming. I tore my shoulder. You were with the human the entire time? The medic asked, mandibles twitching with concern. Yes, he saved my life. Multiple times. The medics exchanged looks but said nothing more. They carefully lifted Ryla onto a transport stretcher. As they prepared to move her, more rescue workers arrived. These were Kirvathi workers from the colony. When they saw Ryla being brought out of the bunker with a human standing nearby, their reactions were immediate. You survived? One of them said, sensory hairs standing straight up. With a human? That must have been terrifying, another added. A third worker, a supervisor Ryla recognized from the processing plant, approached. We thought you were dead for sure when we saw you run toward the old human bunker. Everyone knows those are dangerous, and then to be trapped with one of them during the storms. Ryla felt something hot rise in her chest. Anger. She had felt fear for most of her life, but never much anger. Now it came sharp and clear. Dangerous? She said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Kang Do-hyun kept me warm when I would have frozen. He gave me his jacket. He shared his food and water. He taught me songs to calm my fear. And when my species' instincts made me panic, he respected my space and never once made me feel threatened. The workers fell silent, uncomfortable. He's a human, one of them said weakly. They're predators. So are Brokans, Ryla shot back. So are Vekith and Thorians and half a dozen other species in this colony. But we only fear humans. Do you know why? Because they're better at protecting others than harming them. And that terrifies everyone who wants to keep the galaxy's power structures the way they are. Captain Lee had been watching this exchange with interest. Now she spoke up. Your friend is right. We get this reaction on every relief mission. Fear of humans has become an excuse for a lot of other prejudices. One of the Kirvathi medics helped Ryla sit up on the stretcher. We need to get you to the medical bay. That shoulder needs proper treatment. In a moment, Ryla said. She looked at Do-hyun, who had been standing quietly through all of this. Can I have your contact information? Your real contact, not just a work address. Do-hyun looked surprised. You want to stay in touch? You're my friend, Ryla said simply. Friends stay in touch. He smiled then, genuine and warm. He pulled out his data pad and transferred his personal contact information to her device. If you're ever in Korean space sector, look me up. I make terrible kimchi, but I have a decent apartment with a guest room. Well, not a room designed for Kirvathi anatomy, but we could figure something out. If you're ever in Kirvathi territory, Ryla replied, come to the singing towers on Secondary Prime. I'll teach you the proper harmonies. And my hive mothers make excellent fungal cakes. I'd like that, Do-hyun said quietly. Captain Lee stepped forward. I hate to interrupt, but we really do need to get your friend to medical. And Do-hyun, I need to debrief you on the bunker's structural integrity. The engineering team is assessing damage across the colony. Of course, Captain. As the medics began to move Ryla toward the exit, she called back. Do-hyun, thank you for everything. For seeing me as a person instead of just a scared alien. For giving me space to be afraid. For showing me that strength and kindness can exist together. Thank you, Do-hyun called back. For giving me a chance. For staying when you could have run. For reminding me that I'm more than what people fear. Then Ryla was carried away down the damaged corridor. The last thing she saw was Do-hyun standing in the doorway of the bunker, lit by red emergency lights, watching her go with a small smile on his face. In the medical bay, while doctors worked on her shoulder, Ryla overheard conversations. Some workers expressed disbelief that she'd survived with a human. Others whispered that she'd been lucky the human hadn't eaten her or used her for experiments. The old fears, the old prejudices spoken in voices that thought she couldn't hear. But some voices were different. A young Shirvathi maintenance worker said she'd always thought humans seemed kind, despite the scary stories. An older engineer mentioned that human relief workers had saved his life during the extinction crisis, and he'd never feared them since. The galaxy's opinion was divided, and Ryla realized that her story, hers and Do-hyun's, was just one small voice in a vast debate that had been going on for decades. But maybe small voices mattered. Maybe one story of friendship could inspire another, and another, until the fear became less and the understanding became more. 3 days later, after her shoulder had been treated and stabilized, Ryla was cleared to return to work. She found a message waiting in her personal communication device. It was from Do-hyun, short and simple. Hope your shoulder heals well. I finished my inspection and I'm moving to the next contract. Take care of yourself, friend. And if you ever need anything, you know how to reach me. She sent a reply. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being you. Safe travels, Do-hyun. And next time you're near Kirvathi space, that invitation to the singing towers still stands. Months would pass before they spoke again, but the connection had been made, the friendship established. And though neither of them knew it yet, their time in that bunker would become something larger than just two people waiting out a storm. It would become a story that spread across the galaxy, a story about a human and a Kirvathi who chose to see past fear and find understanding instead. A story that would change minds, open doors, and remind the galaxy of a simple truth. Sometimes the scariest thing you can do is give someone a chance. And sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen for anything to change. The storms had passed. The shelters had opened. And the galaxy continued turning. But something had shifted in that bunker. Something small but significant. Something that whispered of hope for a future where predator and prey could sit together in the darkness and choose trust over fear. That future wasn't here yet, but it was coming. One storm, one shelter, one friendship at a time. 6 months passed after the Vishtara 9 Tempest. Ryla's shoulder healed well, though it ached when atmospheric pressure changed. She'd been promoted to senior engineer and transferred to a better facility on a core world station. Life had improved significantly, but she thought about those hours in the bunker often, about the human who had shown her that fear and friendship could occupy the same space, and friendship could win. She and Do-hyun exchanged messages every few weeks. Short updates about work, about life, nothing profound. Just the kind of communication that friends maintained across the vast distances of space. He was working on a station near the neutral zone now, still inspecting old installations, still living on the edges of civilized space where his presence caused less disruption. Then came the summons. Ryla was called to the Galactic Coalition Conference on Species Integration. She'd been selected to provide testimony about human-alien workplace safety. The official request was dry and bureaucratic, but reading between the lines, she understood. They wanted her to talk about what happened in the bunker. They wanted her to support new restrictions on humans working in mixed-species environments. She almost declined. The thought of speaking in front of thousands of representatives from hundreds of worlds made her sensory hairs stand on edge. But then she read the proposed restrictions. Humans would be banned from non-military positions in mixed-species facilities. They would be required to maintain minimum distances from prey species workers. They would be monitored constantly, treated as potential threats rather than colleagues. She thought about Do-hyun sitting alone in bunkers because people feared him. She thought about him giving her his jacket in the cold, respecting her fear, teaching her songs in the darkness. She accepted the invitation. The Coalition Conference was held on Nexus Prime, the neutral station where galactic politics happened. Ryla arrived 3 days early, her credentials marking her as a witness rather than a delegate. The station was enormous, hosting tens of thousands of beings. She felt very small walking through the massive corridors. The day of her testimony arrived. The chamber was vast, circular, with seating arranged in rising tiers. Representatives from every member species filled the seats. Ryla was escorted to the speaker's platform at the center. Above her, enormous holographic displays showed her image magnified so everyone could see. Her legs trembled as she approached the platform, the weight of thousands of eyes pressed down on her. Most were predator species, some were prey species like herself. All waited to hear what she would say. The chairperson, a distinguished Vekith whose scales had gone silver with age, activated the translation field. Witness Ryla of Kirvathi Secondary. You have been called to provide testimony regarding human interaction protocols. You were present during the Veshtara 9 Tempest event, where you sheltered with a human for an extended period. Please describe your experience. Ryla's voice caught in her translator for a moment. Then she found her words. I was terrified. A murmur went through the chamber. This was what they expected to hear. When I first saw Kang Do-hyun in that bunker, every instinct told me to run. My species has spent millions of years as prey. We fear predators the way humans fear suffocation. It's written into our genetic code. Looking at him was like looking at death. The anti-human faction representatives were nodding. One began to speak, but the chairperson raised a hand for silence. But then the storm came, Ryla continued, and I had to make a choice. Stay with the predator or die in the Tempest. I stayed, and in the hours that followed I learned something that contradicts every safety briefing I've ever received about humans. She manipulated her datapad. The holographic displays changed, showing surveillance footage from the bunker. The Coalition's engineers had recovered it during the post-Tempest investigation. The footage played. It showed Do-hyun sitting calmly, giving her space, offering her water, building the warm shelter, teaching her songs, carefully asking permission before helping with her injury. The hours compressed into minutes of video, but the story was clear. You asked me to speak about human danger, Ryla said, her voice growing stronger. I will tell you about human danger. Humans are dangerous. Dangerous to cruelty. Dangerous to indifference. Dangerous to the idea that some species deserve help and others don't. The chamber erupted in noise. Some voices shouted agreement. Others shouted objection. The chairperson called for order. When silence returned, Ryla continued. Kang Do-hyun was a soldier in the relief fleet during the Kirvathi extinction crisis. He was 16 years old when he chose to fight beside my people against slavers. He carries scars from that choice. Physical scars on his body. Emotional scars from being feared everywhere he goes afterward. She pulled up another image. Do-hyun's military record, which he had given her permission to share. His commendations. His injuries. His 20-year service history helping rebuild worlds after disasters. In that bunker, I was at my most vulnerable, injured, cold, terrified. He could have done anything to me. Instead, he gave me his jacket when I was cold. He respected my fear and gave me space. He worked with me to close that door when the second storm came, even though I could have escaped and he couldn't. He taught me that strength without kindness is just violence. But strength with kindness? That's humanity. The footage continued playing behind her words. The moment when they worked together to close the door. Ryla's shoulder dislocating, Do-hyun carefully treating her injury in the darkness. The galaxy wants to treat humans as weapons that need to be contained, Ryla said. But weapons don't build warm shelters for frightened aliens. Weapons don't teach songs to ease panic. Weapons don't give up their own comfort to ensure others survive. She looked up at the tiers of representatives. I am Kirvathi. My species was nearly destroyed. We were saved by humans who came when no one else would, and when I needed saving again, on a colony that turned me away from their shelters, it was a human who made room for me. A human who saw me as a person worth protecting. The anti-human faction leader, a broken with political ambitions, stood up. This is one anecdote. One unusual situation. It doesn't represent the threat that Deathworlders pose to prey species in normal circumstances. Then let me tell you about normal circumstances, Ryla said. Normal circumstances are fear without cause. Normal circumstances are isolating an entire species, because we're more comfortable with our prejudices than challenging them. Normal circumstances have humans doing the galaxy's dangerous work, saving our species from extinction, and then being told they're too dangerous to work beside us. She played more footage. News reports from the Kirvathi exodus. Human relief workers carrying Kirvathi children to safety. Human soldiers standing between fleeing civilians and slaver ships. Human engineers rebuilding infrastructure on refugee worlds. Every piece of footage I'm showing you is documented history. Humans have saved 18 species from extinction in the past century. They've rebuilt 47 worlds after disasters. They lead 70% of galactic relief efforts, and we repay them by treating them as monsters. Another representative stood. This one was Kirvathi, an older diplomat that Ryla recognized from news broadcasts. You make compelling emotional arguments, but emotion doesn't change biology. Humans are predators. Prey species will always fear them. Some divisions are natural. Natural doesn't mean right, Ryla countered. It's natural for my species to be terrified of Vekith because you have teeth and claws. It's natural for us to fear Thorians because they're larger and stronger. But we don't propose restrictions on Vekith or Thorians working in mixed environments. We only target humans. Why? She let the question hang in the air. Because humans are better than other predator species at something truly threatening. They're better at changing the status quo. They're better at looking at someone suffering and saying, "That's wrong. We're going to fix it." They're better at refusing to accept that some species matter more than others. The chamber was completely silent now. The footage continued to play. The final sequence showed Do-Yun and Ryla sitting together in the darkness, her bioluminescence the only light, sharing warmth and space while waiting for the storm to pass. "I spent 30 hours expecting to die," Ryla said quietly, "either from the storm or from the predator sharing my shelter. Instead, I found a friend. I found someone who showed me that my fear, while understandable, was wrong. And I learned something about courage. Courage isn't not being afraid. Courage is being terrified and still choosing to see the person in front of you, rather than the monster your instincts say they are. Courage is staying in the bunker when you could run. Courage is offering your jacket when you're cold, too. Courage is choosing trust in the darkness." She looked directly at the anti-human faction leader. "You want to pass restrictions because you're afraid. I understand that fear. I lived that fear. But I'm asking you to be brave instead. Be brave enough to give humans the respect they've earned. Be brave enough to acknowledge that we need them more than they need us. Be brave enough to build a galaxy where predator and prey can work together without fear." The chairperson spoke. "Thank you for your testimony, Witness Ryla. The Council will consider your words during deliberations."